Hello, everyone. Hi. Okay, excellent. Hello. We felt that we should get started 30 minutes late as appropriate to the demographic in the room. So, hello and welcome to the very first convening of the new Third World. I've written a silly little speech. No one make fun.
It's not silly. It's your baby. Do it. It's your baby. Do it. We're going to support you in your speech.
Hello and welcome to the first convening. Hi. Of the new Third World. By stepping into the doors, you have consented to being in our New York chapter. I hope we'll all be very, very happy together. I'm Malvika Jolly. Most of you know me, and if you don't, now you do. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming a crew of wonderful and motley women, featuring Sarah Ghazal Ali, Gabrielle Bates, Patrycja Humienik, Ghinwa Jawhari, and Etiola Jones, who will be reading to dazzle and delight us in just a moment. I also want to give a big thank you to Oliver Conan, who graciously invited us into this space free of charge and arranged for the live streaming and all kinds of other delights and pleasures free of charge. So a reminder that we're living in a very difficult era to be a venue of arts and culture and pleasure. So tip well, drink much. I'm going to open this up with like a very small history lesson. So this is a new reading series. It's kind of my baby, and it's inspired by the non-alignment movement's dream for the Third World. So the non-alignment movement was a gathering and alliance of world leaders and nations who came together in the wake of rapid decolonization, liberation struggles, anti-colonial struggles, political revolution that they actually won across most of the world. And all of these leaders, so it's like Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah, Indonesia's Sukarno, it's Egypt's Nasser, it's India's Nehru, it's many people all across the world. Nelson Mandela was president for quite a while. All of these parties, they sort of decided to like look to their left and look to the right. They looked at the United States with the capitalist world order, and they looked at the USSR with state communism, and they decided that they wanted to side with neither. Instead, they sided with one another. And in the mathematics that still underpins our coalition building from the margins to this day, they found that they were, in fact, the majority of the world. So the non-aligned movement made up most of the world, 120 nations. They're extremely iconic. They were leaders of nationalist movements, anti-colonial movements. They were charismatic statesmen coming off of many different forms of indenture, colonialism, extraction, etc. And they all sort of came together and thought about the question of like, what does the word history mean to us? What does the history of the world mean to us? And the question of governance, how should people live? So it was this moment of like profound collective imagination, and they came together and proposed lots of answers of difference, but mainly third world socialism, global solidarities. They really saw themselves in bonds of adjacency, friendship, kinship, and in this we find a great example of what it means to be in relationship with one another across difference. All of us in the diaspora across the ambient of the world. So you really do get this like really beautiful moment where you have radical friendships and interconnectivity, and it shows up in all of these different kind of very saucy ways. You get the Black Panthers going down into Cuba to bring in the sugar harvest. You get Kwame Nkrumah in Delhi, and he's very close friends with Nehru, and to this day there's a road in central Delhi by the seat of the government that is named after Kwame Nkrumah. It's so much, right? It's that when he's deposed by the CIA, he flees to Nasser's Egypt. He brings W.E.B. Du Bois with him and his wife. It's this really radical period of imagining the history and the future of the world and imagining it differently, which I think to us as predominantly like people of color in the US in the kind of like outhouse of identity politics can be very restorative and very healing, at least to me. And there is something to be said, like this movement failed. But in their photographs, they're having the time of their lives. It's like a house on fire. No, it's really good. They're having the best time. They're taking these like official state photographs, but they're smoking hookah and they're like drinking tea and they're wearing their anti-colonial outfits from their different nations. It's all Nehru collars and no one's wearing a tie, and it's just like it looks like a beautiful party. It's people who can't take a bad photo, however they try, and in their state photos, they're all like holding hands. There'll be like pictures of like their kids, and they're flung on the bed asleep, and it's just like it's a fantasy, right? It's very, very beautiful, and something I'd like to think about is, if you think about what colonialism is, British colonialism, its flavor is really having a laboratory to test out these really fringe economic theories, these really like radical, terrible, and like out and on kind of theories, and using most of the world as your laboratory. So what the non-aligned leaders were doing was using their own nations as laboratories for a different kind of project, right? What it means, to test out different theories of what it means to have social welfare, to have civic engagement, to have literacy, to have solidarity, to have friendship, to be really hot together. Ultimately, like, with the fall of the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall, it failed, right? We're living in the aftermath of history. Another reason to tip well, drink much. But, it's clear in the moment, right, that it feels inevitable that capitalism, Western liberal democracy has really won out for the present moment. We shed what we don't need.
Yes.
So it feels inevitable right now, right? That those are the moments, those are the forms of governance, those are the ways we relate to each other under the state, and those are like the structures in which we have to live our lives, right? But as Ursula Le Guin reminds us, capitalism seems inescapable, but so did the divine rights of kings, right? So the premise of this reading series is kind of picking up where the non-aligned movement left off, to go deeper into new forms of political and poetical conspiracy and fugitivity with our diasporic kindreds, to remember that encloses and encompasses more of us than we would imagine under like the tight confines of how we think of race in America, right? There's a lot of people who are marginal. And to sort of engage in a world of, as Etiola said, friendship across distance. And to remember that is an essentially imaginative and ethical act which carries enormous transformational potential. Thank you for listening. You're doing so good.
We have potential.
We do. So, I'm almost done. In their histories, there are certain lessons that we can carry with us. First, that our friendship has a short present but a long history. That our communities are not just unified against traumas in this nation. Instead, we are a part of each other's past, present, and future together. And in this way, in my heart, I feel that the New Third World sees the myth of non-origin and raises you one, pulls at its strings until it begins to unwind, and we see the knot at its core, the one left behind by empire, right? And we see, if you turn to your left and you turn to your right, you will see that your knots are the same. The second is the question of what it means to not only theorize global solidarities, but to embody them, right? I think those are adjacent questions, but different questions. And as the poet I.S. Jones writes, what I understand about home is an ever-shifting landscape. Home is when I'm with my fellow immigrant daughters. Home is a warm plate of food from my favorite cafe. Home is when I get to cook for my friends. Home is the first kiss of a new romance. I'm so sorry to out you. Home is Bed-Stuy. And that is one crucial answer, right? And there are many answers. So like when Diane de Prima writes, love spelled backwards is revolution, perhaps that is another, right? And I think for those of us who know that the personal is political, that the revolutionary path is also the scenic path, that too is an answer, right? To live in pleasure is to live in revolution. And we shall have our bread and our roses too. But fundamentally, I think it's about what we've all done already, right? It's about showing up to the room, filling the room. It's about showing up to the fight with the knives between our teeth. We're ready, we're in the lion's den, and we're like snatching out its teeth. We're ready. There's a lion coming. The third lesson is that time is the ultimate colonizing force, which I think is something that's on many of our minds in this room. We're of the cult of Etel Adnan, who has the beautiful show up at the Guggenheim now, and who passed away this morning. So I think a good thing to remember, right, as we look backwards and then we look forwards, is that time is the ultimate colonizing force. But as Jack Spicer tells Lorca, poets are time mechanics, right? We're not embalmers, and that we're here to preserve language, that words must be led across time and not preserved against it, right? So we have a vital role to play. And the fourth lesson is this, that there is a quiet power in being neither one thing nor another, right? That the playful irony to me of the non-alignment movement and their like silly little name is that it is in fact an alignment to be non-aligned, right? It is in fact a way of coming out into the streets and being adjacent to your colleagues and seeing that you are the majority of the world. And I think that's like, there's a quiet lesson in that there is a third path, there is a third space, and it is the space of insurrection, right? It is also the space of the best parties. As Fred Moten would remind us, a rent party is a space of insurrection. It is the space of the undercommons, and it is the space out in the vast fields of unmeaning where we're all running out of the burning building, grabbing up in our arms everything we can see, and then we're running the fuck out. Right? And the lesson in that to me is that, you know, that without being able to see beyond, you can see beyond, you can build there, and you can build on the way to there, which has been really important and vital to me. So thank you all. So it's now my utmost and absolute pleasure to introduce the first of a wonderful lineup of poets and readers that we are all so fucking blessed to have in the room. First up is Lebanese American writer based in Brooklyn but currently right here in this room. Give it up for Ghinwa Jawhari. She was born in the Midwest to Jewish parents. She was selected, her chapbook Bint was selected by Arya Aber for Radix Media's Own Voices Chapbook Prize.
It's very good.
She's very, very, very good. Her essays, fiction, and poetry are on view in Catapult, Narrative, Mizna, The Adroit Journal, and others. She's a 2021 Margins Fellow at the Asian American Writers Workshop and here to bless us with her verse.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
I don't know how to follow that because I don't have a history lesson. I don't know anything about anything. And that was so beautiful, Malvika. Thank you so much. I feel like enlightened. Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Ghinwa. I'm gonna read some old stuff and then some new stuff. And I hope you like it. And, and if you don't, that's okay. Etel Adnan died this morning. And I was shocked because I learned about it on Instagram, which is a horrid, like, that's just horrible that I have to say that. It was, I don't think, like, ethnically she was Lebanese, but she lived in Lebanon for a long time, and she was, I guess, culturally Lebanese, and she's a lesbian, and I'm a lesbian, so that was a very, like, big, you know, moment. And I always had hoped that I would meet her, even though she was super old, but same thing that happened with Toni Morrison, here we are, not meeting anyone. So anyway, yeah, it's okay. So I have, I'm super grateful to be reading to you guys. I have a Lebanon poem that I'll read first, and then I'll read a couple others, and this is for, today this is for Etel. It's called Birth During a Ceasefire. Beirut aglow, blue neon of a prayer bead, every 2 decades reborn. My grandmother sweats her out like a night of drinking. Around her, the city swarms with smoke and future martyrs. My mother arrives without a doctor, early witness to a blockade. Young platoons comb Beirut's capillary alleys, suck from ruined cigarettes along the cleft lip of the Corniche. A country's worth of optimism trills their newfound baritones. In earnest, they shout brother, embrace, clap shoulders open-palmed. My grandmother marries an anxious lieutenant, sleeps with his pharmacist, addicted to solutions. Empty apartments infested with boy soldiers, mites, refugees, leap from one landlord to another. July chaperones an inward pilgrimage. How troublesome impatience. A drink left on the balcony rail to fall. A woman in heat pacing. Flat stones skipped and drowned. Small bodies unrecoverable.
Woo!
Thank you. This is from this is a newer thing. I'm sorry, I'm very short, so I'm always like conscious of how short I am. This is called Make Believe. This is from a newer. I forgot my rose-colored glasses, so that you can see the
beautiful.
words. They're so nice. Thanks.
Do you have to take them off?
I mean, I could leave them.
Leave them up. We love them.
They were $8 from the streets. All right, this poem is called Make Believe. And it's about a lot of actually what Malvika was talking about, like the first world, what we feel in the first world. So this is Make Believe. When I wore my mother's gold, I resembled a knockoff from Bleecker, something almost itself, made more fake by its proximity to the real. There is pity in an imitation, true, in the unanswered want. What did we look like before our mothers, asks anyone who doesn't have one. What did our countries look like before America? I wore her perfume to come see you, an expensive bottle I'd bought for her myself. On the train, I felt like a baby with a fist in its mouth, formless and harmless, good smelling. It seemed absurd, especially then, to call Arabs anything more dangerous than what we are, all pseudo-Frenched, highlighted, sparkling under eyeshadow like a bomb. Still, nothing is more American than a gas USA, a Pakistani on the register, a Palestinian beneath a minivan in the garage. Men with large noses tend to lie. We're told sometimes a man is just a man. A bad man can become a theology. I bulked. I learned to wear a bra and go to work. In America, I smoked outside the church and repented the same day. I got off at your stop. My pants had baby written across the ass. God bless the United States, said a man who wasn't from here. There was music in the street touching something deep and terrible in me. My hands reached for the dollars my mother had given me for lunch. Green paper that could, for us, spell the future in stars. The face of a slaveholder featured on each one. I handed it to the new American slave, the white man with veteran on his cardboard. His eyes remembered me from another life. See? Nothing is as American as our cruelty, manufactured in bulk. Here is the difference. I can still admit I love my Eid, its walnuts quenched in rosewater, its sonorous prayers, the salty smell of my mother, the person I embrace first on each new year. Tears and sweat and all of us grateful together. Tell me you feel the same towards your apple pie, your casseroles and Christmas, and I'd sing America back from its slumber. When I'd met you at last, the telephone wires hung between crosses in twin rows under God, and smokestacks emptied their dark filth into the heavens. They stood as tall as the proudest men I knew. But I was a monster then. I was an other. The glory of the good country before me like an omen, opening its black belly like a wave. Thanks, guys. So this is the last one. Unless, I don't know what time. I didn't time myself. Malvika, you can just start clapping.
Perfectly on time.
Oh, thank you. God bless. Sorry. This is also new. So this is called creation myth. This idea that, like, you know, we're all of the deities that we have are males, and that didn't sit right with me, obviously. So I wrote this. Yes. So this is called creation myth. I need a drink. They have They have Rittenhouse here, you guys. This is great. Highly recommend. All right. So, and this is based on the Christian, you know, a rib was taken from Adam, and then Eve, you know. Okay.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Listen, okay. As a scientist, I'm just kidding. So frustrating. All right. So the Christian myth. The truth is, there was no rib. No breath of life, no clay. There was your wax skeleton coagulating into its stencil, and I was the garden. And beneath my rib you lived and ate for 9 months, and called my womb Eden. I formed your bones from my bones. My blood too became yours. The truth is you were an animal body, like any other, like the pheasant, like the serpent, like the hornet on the fig leaf. And the truth is there was no father. In the beginning there was, and it would always be me, the bounty that birthed and raised you. Remember you called all this earth mother, but when you learned to read, suddenly Allah was he, God was his, the sacrifice always a son. Listen, there was no fruit, no rules for fruit to avoid, because have I ever made a thing and told you not to eat it? It was me who fed you first, and from my body. What did I make that wasn't meant for you? There was no apple, no pomegranate, no citrus bulb that granted you knowledge. The truth is the tree was a cedar, and the cedar brought you all good things until you nearly made it extinct. It was the cedar you hammered into boats, and the boats you took to trade, and trade brought you an empire, and the empire bought you from yourself. And the truth is, yes, I played favorites, I spoiled you. Abundance was the sin, not knowledge, not theft, and abundance is what you learned from me. Abundance like I cried and it flooded. I forgot the stove on and it filled the sky with burning stars. I said be, and accidentally it was. You chased the tails of comets then and charted them as if to ask me why me. But what did I know then? I was 15 and alone, a virgin in a red state, a rape, someone with no people, no mother, just a manger and no choice. Did I do that right? Isn't that the language you invented to feel sorrow, feel pity? Anything but disgust for me, for your mother, your sister, every girl on your news. You'll want to know that Eve came first. The garden was full of Eves, and it wasn't until a son demanded an orbit of his own that paradise was ever lost. Listen. Resonating strongly in there. Listen, the truth was there was no week, no seventh day I did not rest. My work was done and not done and ending, and you built a temple and resented me. You made rules and you broke them and hid as if it wasn't my back you'd spawned on, as if I didn't know you. And you called me every name and painted me any color and praised me while in the same breath smiting me and never once admitting, even on the high note, mother. The truth is you still repeat the same mistakes every day, every era, in the loop and axis around the sun, around your sons. The truth is, it was all true. There was Eden in its glory, Eden, the first woman you would ever disown. That's it for me, guys. Thank you. That's super nice. Thank you. You don't have to clap. I have the great pleasure now of introducing Pakistani American writer, editor, and educator, Sarah Ghazal Ali, who holds an MFA in poetry from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where she was an MFA fellow and Juniper fellow, a recipient of fellowships from Five Pillars, ISF, the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop, and the Seventh Wave. Sarah currently serves as editor-in-chief of Palette Poetry. She lives in California and is drawn like a moth to all things green. Please join me in welcoming Sarah.
It's such a pleasure to be here. I had such a morning, but now I'm having such an afternoon. So lovely. It's such a delight to go right after Ghinwa because I feel like so many of our images and our poems are cousins. So I'm gonna rearrange the order in which I read. So my first one will kind of echo Ghinwa's a little bit. So I'm gonna start with Self-Portrait as Mouthpiece of God.
Yes.
Yes.
We're fans of your words.
In most versions, I am impossible. Flesh immolated by the hot voice of a calling angel. Not Sybil, never a throat for any wise man or lord's speech. Though I too was once congealed blood, a mere clot. And I too became a clump of sinew, then grew a body of man. Though I am no man nor prophet, not an oracle, nor beautiful enough to tongue a syllable of revelation. My hair is palmed and pulled, my form lithe, obedient, and so kept vacant. I heed all commands. I bear the brunt, someday even a child, and once I'm a mother, paradise will beckon from beneath my ordinary feet. No, not mouthpiece, but gaping cervix, marrow blown from the hollow neck of a bone, but still a message worth hearing. And then I'll read Theophanies, which is it's the title poem of my little manuscript in progress. Theophanies.
If nothing else, at least this clemency. 2 whirls in each face, round pistols burrowed and searching. Tariq asks what I saw in my sleep. I weave a sweet lie about my mother's pomegranates, the kitchen tiles we bloodied, searching for the seed in each rumored to belong to a mirror tree in paradise. The truth, a girl with melting eyes who holds my gaze all night, vitreous rivers gushing down our faces until one of us wakes. There's no unseeing it. The whites thick and clotted, erupting into weeds where they fall near my feet. My people don't share what darkness we've seen. Fear a message from the devil. Tariq says true dreams reveal themselves at the first inhale of sunrise. How to hold wide my eyes for the ineluctable light. On a disappeared horizon, a bush continues to burn, a lilied cervix swarms green, and Jacob is still sightless, 40 years lost to grief. Clouds drone above me, my 2 ordinary eyes sealed in sleep. Every vision is redolent and terrible. Every temporal sight either a miracle or a mistake. Thank you. Okay, and then I'll close out with a new poem that doesn't exist anywhere else, but now it will exist in here. And so this one's called Eid al-Adha. That you have already killed a blindfolded goat, stroked its fur as it bled against your jeans. Were I to touch warm blood, eyes closed, I'd think it my own. Your cool hand over mine, urging me to follow my dreams, my throat hitching charily against permission. A tale is as reliant on who tells it as who listens, on the temperament attributed to each's God. One version, Abraham was commanded, so obliged, so rewarded with the goat, a substitute sacrifice. Another, he woke from a dream, interpreted it a sign. I don't claim to know which son, but believe that he nodded, insisted, you must. His eyes closed, his hand tightening over his father's, pulling the blade toward himself. Must I keep seeing these rites my father forbade? The dream roiling turbid through me a dream gaining limbs, speaking. That you sat holding its cooling body, whispering 99 names to soothe until it stilled. The angle of the knife capable of precluding pain. That I believe this, and you, holding close the interpretations of fallible men. Now, it's my great honor to introduce Patrycja Humienik. A beautiful, wonderful poet who dazzles me daily with her grace and her brilliance, both on the page and beyond it. I'm so grateful for your friendship. I'm ignoring the typical bio because I don't have it in front of me and just saying nice things instead, but Patrycja does many amazing things and is wonderful, and you should Google her. Patrycya's poetics is one of devotion to language, to bodies, to beauty, to landscapes, and above all, to striving toward a full and actualized sense of self. In Anchor Baby, the title poem of her manuscript in progress. I hope she reads that poem. She writes, I kiss everything. I leave a mark. Invocation, as in a prayer I want to repeat. This, for me, gets to the heart of her work. Her poems are prayers you'll want to repeat and repeat and repeat. They are definitely leaving their mark. On her birthday, today, on this beautiful Sunday, please help me welcome and celebrate the beautiful and brilliant Patrycja. I knew she would make me cry. You had to do me like that.
Woo! Happy birthday!
No, thank you so much for being here. It's truly unreal. Thank you for that intro. I guess I have to read Anchor Baby. I was going to skip it to have my free, but yeah, I'll start with Anchor Baby and...
Not me controlling the reading.
I love it. Thank you, everybody. It's such a pleasure to have so many brilliant writers and artists in the room. So thank you for being here with us. Anchor Baby. I keep close the intonation of my name, spoken in my mother's voice. There was a time I let people mispronounce it. I don't. Remember the sound of my grandfather's voice. I've lost the word for the flower I could be. Impatient blossom, used to never wear lipstick. Now I smear shades of azalea on my lips. I kiss everything. I leave a mark. Invocation, as in a prayer I want to repeat. The physicality of it, prayer, kissing, echoes of a younger me, trying to be approved of. I'm not saying I am better now. I look up how to say anchor in my first language. Once I didn't need to search. Kotvica. My mama gave birth to me a month after my parents arrived in the States. Nie mówiła wtedy po angielsku. It was her first time on a plane. I know nothing of ground, of letting the ship sleep. I fly for hours to visit. If I could bind myself to a place, put cut flowers in a vase, I would thank my mother that way. Instead, I pour the petals out. Sarah's beautiful intro. We love you! This gorgeous crew. On devotion.
Yes!
Not the splendor of the dead king's baths, but the peacocks demanding devotion. Is it devotion to pour a glass of water for your lover? Alone in the back of a candlelit mass in English, not the vaulted frescoes of my childhood basilica, mumbled prayers in Polish, lit a candle for my mother's parents who I never met. I had questions for God. Do you renounce imperialism? Winters ago, on the phone, a friend saying, jealousy is good because it is a form of protection. But what if protection is a form of harm? Winter again, snowed in, my lover shoveling flake after flake out my mouth and into the slush pile, a pathway out to where the roads are closed. That it rarely snows where I now live delights and disturbs me, e.g. kiwis ripening in early December. The Midwestern Polish priest, a family friend, sends vaccine conspiracy theory videos via WhatsApp. Along the fence, strung lights remind me of snow, where white camellias grow instead. That I want to see every body of water, lava, lands I don't know the name for, the Red Sea. Isn't it enough to have seen flamingos, pink with feeding in the salt flats, in the driest desert in the world? Sometimes I think of God while washing my feet. I think of where I have not walked, my longing to go further. Sorry, I'm trying to decide which one for my last one.
All of them. All of them. Read all. Read everything.
I'll read two more because one's short, so I'll do read the book. All right. I'll do two more. I found a lover and we left the city. Temporarily. Crackle of the fire said as much. Temple into the sprawl of limbs which came later. First, the alchemists, Oysters we ate quietly as we could, laughing, not saying a word, eyes full of language. And it wasn't that no one had ever touched me before, but it had never been like this, tunnelless. Not a search for a prize zippered pearl to coax out of grieving, not the scarcity of hardship or the dismissal of it, but we did look up, air glow, sky a cicatrix, purpling, paler, damage and the need to undo it, not to fix, but to unribbon the past. My mama grew up in a rural place, rolling hills of jade. My name betrayed her wish to leave that lack. Szlachetnie urodzona, desire for wealth and its associated ease. I don't blame her for using a name like a tool for weeding. I too prune and tug at my story, but she wanted me to live up to my name, and for that I might blame her. I learn other names. Plants that please me, forsythia, hyacinth, pyracantha. My lover gives me a dry bouquet. I prefer weeping, willow, even seaweed, something of water. I want not to say this, but to be understood with my eyes, the way I was for a moment by the fire. But some lovers are not for lasting, though that part comes later. Must I tell the truth? I have to close out with one with a scorpion in it because it's Scorpio season, so we have to do that. And we have multiple amazing Scorpio poets in the room, including the poet I'm going to introduce next, whose birthday weekend it is also. So, appetite. Plucking nasturtiums, not mine. Summer being a kind of aggression. Take, eat, sweat. I'm not ungrateful. Still, I could have fewer expectations. The blackberries in nearby woods are unripe, have no faces. Not expressionless, just not in a rush to reveal themselves. What confession would you like from me? What I fear? That I wish to never hunger? The creature I am kin to is many-eyed, but the eyes are nearly useless. A scorpion is propelled by scent, by touch, by particles displaced. Feeling for the question you harbor. Your breath on the page. Thank you. And like Sarah, you can Google Gabrielle Bates, who you should Google. She's important. You gotta Google her. There's so much to Google, but I'm not going to read that kind of bio. I'll just share with you a little bit about this amazing, brilliant poet and writer and visual artist, who's also an incredibly insightful teacher and editor, and is also my dear beloved friend, who shares this birthday weekend with me. It's her birthday, so happy belated birthday. And I met Gabby at a reading at Open Books, which is a dreamy poetry bookstore in Seattle, and it was shortly after I moved. And I was looking at this Inger Christensen book, Alphabet, and she said, I feel like you should have this book, and bought it for me before we knew each other's names.
What a psycho.
And she just has a depth of, there's so much more to say about that evening and why that book meant a lot to me. But her depth of intuition and care and fierce intelligence and imagination and orientation toward a more gorgeous and just future and brilliant artist's eyes have just changed my life. Like, that's just the best way to say it. The only way really right now. But she has that effect on many who are lucky to know her.
It's true.
Stream, so in this room. I said in the stream, it is a dream too. In this room. So I can't wait for all of us to hold her book, Judas Goat, coming out Tin House. I can't wait to hold it in our hands. There are so so many lines of hers that echo in my mind, poems of hers I return to that feel like stitch in my heart. And one poem that maybe she'll read tonight, Dear Birmingham. Ooh. There's this stanza that goes, what I have wanted most is many lives, one for each longing, round and separate. Feels, yeah, need I say more? Let's welcome Gabrielle Bates.
On the poems. I love your laughs. Hi.
Hi. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. A dream is right. A dream is right. This first poem Sarah requested, so this is for you. Woo! In the dream in which I am a widow. I have carried a portion of your ashes overseas to the Spanish statue of the falling angel. Its snake of stone wrapped twice around one leg's ankle and coiled around the thigh of the other. Stone jaw unhinged and reaching for the humanesque hand. We lived, remember, briefly, near it. One wing arcs up in the sky, erecting an honest steeple. One that points not straight, but upward and curving, as faith goes, back to earth. I've scattered part of what you were from the mouth of my black jacket sleeve onto the field across, watched over by tall and leaning trees, the field from which you returned to me so many nights, cold as ice and glowing, your socks full of grass. I heard the door open, blessed the opening, blessed the stench you brought inside our home, blood tangled in the hair on your shin, bits of another man's flesh in your cleats. I was curious about this forbidden, felt language. I rubbed my thumbs into your muscles, the salt of you softening as it entered me. You were a wonder with your bones and skin on. You focused your violence with a pipette's precision, and it never spilled in my direction, never though I lapped at its opening, determined to get a taste from the source. Years before we went north, before your bed was my bed, there was a garden in the south we snuck to, where spring made us a headboard of heady jessamine. The poisonous vines scent sweet, aneurysmal sweet, swelling our brains against our skulls. I remember, even in that giddy upward state, I always knew truth was somewhere not in that sweetness. Now I've made of you a figure always falling. What sort of monster does this make me? I just a few days ago scattered a family member's ashes, so that poem feels different to me now. It has like a hidden layer. This is also my first in-person reading in forever, and my first in-person reading since like the book was picked up, and just on the heels of this just like dreamy weekend with these beloved, beautiful, brilliant poets and people, and being with Etel Adnan's art yesterday. It's just I can't think of a more special context to read again. All right. Okay. This poem's called Intro to Theater.
Yes.
I can remember one particular time in her grandparents' attic. Her legs, slightly older than mine, shaved amphibian smooth. Her breath around my face like an evaporated puddle. Naked or almost, in semi-darkness, her blue eyes dusk. We wouldn't allow our mouths to touch. She'd hold her hand over mine and tongue her own knuckles. Each time was the last time until the real last time, which felt more like a beginning. Earth on the third day, alluvium, swamp lily, wax myrtle, rose mallow. Adam would kiss me in a similar way not long after, as part of the school play, using his thumb to make a barrier between our lips. And all our classmates would watch us. I was bleeding from my center. I remember the moment his hand made contact with my face, risking to smear a forgettable line's blue ink on my cheek. So much time passed between the kiss and the ending. I remember thinking it seemed like the applause was for our deaths.
Oh my God.
Okay, one more poem. This one's called The Mentor.
Oh, this column is so fucking good. Yo, help me find out.
In this room. The poems are so dark, I feel like I have to be Jekyll and Hyde. I'm like, ha ha ha, and now. Yes. The Mentor. He carved faces into the dead parts of cedars. He wore a belt of chisels around his waist. To determine where they were dead, he took a leafless limb, followed it like thread back to its spool, down the corresponding strip of trunk. In the middle of those woods, where the ground sloped into a large bowl, mist often got trapped, parted at our calves. We walked together for a long time, and as we walked, he traced what I said back to my left breast, down to the tender hole where I was once attached to my mother until I went silent. Then he braced my back against a tree. He took out a chisel and kneeled. You ask when I stopped shouting everything and started keeping language close to my mouth, as if I were reading to a match that had to last my life. Well, it was not that day. That was much later, after the trees had all been cleared and the earth leveled. When I stopped begging to be believed and started telling the truth, no man was there. I have the immense honor now of introducing one of the dearest souls to me on this planet, the poet, the legend, the gatherer of wild flowers, my kindred in crossroads of the violent and the sacred, tender heart, fierce love, I.S. Jones. Yes! I first met Etiola through her poems and a series of emails. We've talked about the short films in our brains that often precede or accompany our poems, haunted by goats and sex and notions of the holy. Her generosity as a person astounds me. Her care with both language and people, a source of constant wonder. Itiola's chapbook, Spells of My Name. So hot off the presses, she hasn't even gotten to hold her own copy yet. It is waiting at home, in which I was lucky enough to get to read as a manuscript, is as brilliant and nourishing as any full-length collection I've read in the last 5 years. Maybe I'm going to just keep going for a minute. It's fine. Many poets approach chapbooks as a kind of stepping stone for their first books, but what Itiola has done is craft something that exists apart from what will be her first book, a companion in some ways, akin, but with its own sphere of focus and obsessions and formal experiments. What remains true in everything Itiola writes, however, is an attention to the erotic, the hideous, and the tender. Written from the sacred and sexy darkness of night, her poems, like those of Vivi Francis or even Sharon Olds, takes us towards and through the difficulties of life, lineage, and love with an urgent and sensual pace. Itiola on and off the page is a holy spitfire that looks you right in your eyes. So hold on to your fucking faces. Agnes Jones!
Francis and Sharon Olds? So young and already done so much. I want to thank, I did not expect, I mean, I knew this was going to be like a special event, but I just like, damn, so many people here. People I know in real life, people I've met from the internet. Is that you? I'm so grateful for all this love in this room. You know, my best friend can attest this. This year started out so brutally for me, and I'm ending it with so much love. Like, wow. I'm not gonna cry. I've cried enough today. Oh, because my eyeliner. I don't know if my lipstick is still on, but you know, whatever.
It's there.
Oh,
It's great. It looks
wavy. Okay, cool. I am going to first read a poem I wrote for Gabby. When we were sending letters back and forth. I need to find it. Go give me a sec. I did not formally prepare a set because I was scrambling to get here, and just this whole week has been like kind of a crazy fun whirlwind, and I've just been living off the seat of my pants. Oh, I found it. Correct. So when Gabby and I were like first getting to know each other and becoming friends, we were writing poems back and forth to each other. And, this poem really helped me get through, a really brutal winter that was both brutal on my spirit, but also very informative to me writing my chapbook. So, this is for Gabrielle Bates. End of winter. The other day, my plant tumbled from the fridge. I looked down and dark earth spilled all over my kitchen. I thought it was an omen at first. In a dream, I gave my sister back to the earth, and in return it was spring. Much how I said in my letter, Barry and sister shared the same root word. Burial as homecoming. To be tucked beneath the earth is the faith of replenishment. If the flowers are brave enough to return after dying back, then surely I can find hope again. I wore winter's dark veil for so long, I began to believe I was a bride to grief. Gabrielle, I admit to you, I'm afraid of spring's return, because winter is taking with it everything I've lost. Please don't leave without me, I say to those retreating nights. And this reminds me of what I told Patrycja the other day, about a line that keeps visiting me. Now, I measure time by the receding snow. Days are lengthening and new hours stretch my clarity. It may also be of use to mention the fallen plant's genus name is moonshine, a succulent of the Sparaceae family, a name an ex once gifted me. Yesterday was his birthday, and now his name turns to rot in my mouth. I thought to at last burn our last portrait, an ex-boyfriend elegy of sorts, to let fire eat his face, but then I looked to the girl next to him. Who was she? A girl who was so desperate to be loved by a man who didn't know her favorite word was mellifluous. Not this woman who confessed to the dark. I don't know when it happened, but I no longer desire men. Not this same woman who gazed up at the four magpies passing over the afternoon and asked them, where are you going? And can I come with? Now spring is imminent, and I'm rewilding. Before winter forced its measure upon Lake Mendota, I went back to the first sight of longing and read poems to the water. On the ride home, I played Golden Butterflies by Ludovico Einaudi and reached my face, then hands out of the Uber, the driver thinking I'm likely to jump. I've been trying to recreate that feeling ever since. Gabrielle, it's as close as I've come to flight. What am I doing with my life? Yes, I'm going to read some poems from the chapbook, Spells of My Name, which, what's today's date? Today's the 14th.
14.
It's coming out T-minus 16 days, the 30th.
Pre-order that.
Buy it.
Pre-order it.
You should all pre-order it because, you know, I'm dear and shit, and like, you know, immigrant daughters, and if you like language, you know, as a measure for longing, you should like, it could be your jam, you know. Christmas is coming up, like, you know, buy literature. Treat yourself. Okay. Yeah, yo, I'm gonna read a poem about being a lesbian.
Yeah!
Queer American. I have sex with men but make love to women. I only wish to fuck men who also desire to be fucked by men. In the dream, I make love to Lorraine Hansberry in a rose garden. I make straight men bow to the god of pussy. I part her legs and kiss each faded bruise between her thighs. In the dark, I practice my kegels to remind men who is fucking who. Every interview asks me the same question. What does it mean to be a queer American and Nigerian? Queer men take their internalized homophobia out on my naked body. I count tiles on the ceiling to keep from laughing. My mother says she understands switching to women because loving a man is hard. I haven't spoken to my father in months. I smoke, sometimes drink. My father stops doing both after the stroke. I have his eyes. I used to believe joy, like other sources of light, are scarce. He knows nothing about me. There were things we were too embarrassed to say. Actually, let me do this real quick before I forget. I'm gonna read. So like many of my friends know that like I am a superstitious African, and as a result, I'm very like I have very particular rituals that I don't break, and one of them was like not uttering the name of my manuscript before it was fully formed. Like I didn't tell anyone the name of Spells of My Name until I signed the contract, and I'm like, well, it's written in ink now. Don't take it back. Like don't take backs. But I decided to afford myself the grace of letting my book exist in the world and not. I wanted to share it, and this is what I'm doing now. So I'm going to read one of the title poems from the full-length Blood Mercy. In the word of Mick Jenkins, drink more water. Blood Mercy. Summer begins its descent. We waste the hours in love with our youth, with our girlhood. Red popsicles drip on our good dresses. Our legs carry us through the wild grass, skin sighing against each green blade, your hands scratched on bark, me finally mastering the two-strand twist I practice on you because your hair finally grew past your shoulders. It's late July. It's us two under the low-hanging expanse. Your hair is so long, I'm jealous, I whisper. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding my kinswoman. I wanted to deliver you from cruelty and gave you my own instead. Beneath your long skirt, a red tapestry of rubies. I rinsed your legs with a backyard spigot. My life made sense when we were of one mind and two bodies. Now you keep secrets from me. Your diary says as much. The seasons turn and we stop knowing each other. Take my hand, I say, and we tangle ourselves in the hammock. When your head lolls onto my chest, I notice your hand is still bleeding. I pull a bobby pin from my hair, bend it straight, open my skin. My blood meeting yours to become Cain Abel. My name eating yours to become cannibal. Mercy at your still body becomes claimable. Call it grace or pity. You, my ancestor, my wife. I should have ended you when the stakes were lower. Wound of my wound, immutable bond. My heart unknowable from yours becomes chainable. Clarity arrives as patient light. No matter what wind will drive us apart, you'll never leave me. Actually, let me read this poem first. I'm going to read like a few more from before I go back to the chapbook, and then we should all get libations after this. Sounds like a plan.
Ow!
Okay. Oh, one thing I'll say is that, like, I think, like, most writers in this room will know that, like, you know, this writing, and then, like, revision, in my opinion, is where the real writing begins. And, like, this poem, it was, like, cute when I wrote it, but then I pimped it out. I was like, ooh, this poem got some bouillon on it. That's fine. My best friend just closed her eyes like this, yo. I love her, but goddamn, like. Between grace and mercy. We learned mercy so young. A beetle with its hind legs crushed. A dog impaled by a rusty fence. A rabbit thinking it was clever enough to reach the other side of the road. A veil of light drapes each moment, red, tangerine, azure, lavender, each waiting to reimagine the sky. The beetles, frantic to undo what sudden brute force divided its legs, still moving towards the song. With the beetle, it was simple. Cain crushed the small creature with the heel of her foot splayed open like a wish. People think suffering is meant to be purposeful. Otherwise, why name it? Maybe I'm nostalgic for what wounds best. The rabbit, and tire, and asphalt. Asphalt gowned in viscera makes a new animal. A dog leaps too low and yelps all evening for Baba into the orange-pink sky. All day, blood weeps into the rust. Rust twists deep into the animal. I take the dog's face in my hand. Touch is the body's first language. Blood is the body's first covenant. Kill it, says a sister. You kill animals all the time. I kiss the animal's eyes closed. I'm gonna read this last poem from Blood Mercy, and then there are like two more or so from the chapbook, and then we're gonna okay. So one thing I've been doing with the manuscript is writing these etymology of poems, right, which are supposed to be like ars poeticas, so to speak, from these personas. Which, you know, I don't know if that's every bit of thing that's done, but, like, you know, the fun thing about writing a first book, you're like, I'm just gonna do weird shit I've never seen done before. Like who gonna check me, right? Like, husband, child, etymology of Cain. The first return of spring I could remember. Mama took me out to the landscape, said burrow your hands into the soil and listen. So I did. I am daughter and husband, sister and mother. My name means she who creates, crafts, forms. The world I wanted most was one that would bend at will. I didn't understand this as a child when my first narcissus wilted in the heat. It was the law of my home. Because I am older, my sister does as she tells me. She cuts me a bowl of red oranges and I delight the spoils. Firstborn, third parent, mother of my own haunting lack. Was I allowed my youth, or was I just a surrogate to salvage my parents' union? My nails, I keep my nails short and my heart planted in the ground. My hands have come to know the wet dark intimately. My parents only touch at night, plea each other's names. My sister calls me perverse and I say how. Frogs envelope their softness into each other. Wild horses mount their mates to undo an ancient appetite. The soil tells me as much. In my tantrums, I cursed the narcissus. It said, yes, Lord, then perished at my feet. I know what love is because I know what violence is capable of. Truth is, I have no husband habits. Mother weeps in my lap with her good eye unblackened by Adam's rage. Baba, you gave me this dominion to master. You want perfection, yet you want the labor done with human hands. How do I win if there's no pleasing you? I'm gonna read. I don't know. Yeah,
to exhale.
Oh yeah. I got you, pimp. I got you. Yeah, I'll read that one last. Yeah, I'll do it. Okay. Yeah, this is like. Okay, so like my god uncle isn't here, and that's what I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna share him in public. That's what Instagram is for. No.
This is a live stream.
Oh. No, I'm just kidding. I love him. I'm just kidding though. I really love him to pieces. Hey, Ty. Yeah. So I only bring him up because this is his favorite poem in the chapbook, and I keep gravitating towards it. I don't know why. But yeah, enjoy. Can you speak Yoruba after Kaba Akbar? I asked my father for the word thief in Yoruba. He says ole, that it also means lazy. Ask him for rain, he says ojo, that it's the same word for coward. It's been said you begin to master a language when you dream in it. I asked my father if his mother visits his sleep, searching the dark with his face for her hands. Faithful as nightfall, my father doesn't answer, calls me buruku, a word he won't translate, but I know is a rebuke by the way it undoes my name. So I slip the word heavy as a shot shell into my mouth. There are other ways to spell silence. A faceless hunter moves towards a black fawn. Snow renames the landscape, but there isn't a word for snow in Yoruba. Language retreats where it isn't felt. A buckshot rings its bells to the sky. A herd of deer scatters the day's remains and are chased by their panic into the night. I asked my father how to say yes in Yoruba. He says Beni, but that it also translates to it is so. The hunter moves as the fawn moves, through the procession in trees, taking aim between the eyes, my bleeding skull knighted to the floor. Forgive the tongue that flexes towards what it knows best. Ojo, ojo. I kept saying coward when I meant to say rain. So, our great beloved fellow immigrant daughter, Edel Adnan, had her great homegoing today. And I feel like when someone lives to be that old, you can be sad about it, yes, though, but it is a great miracle in this wide, vast wildlife to live to be 96, was it?
Yeah.
96 years. Almost a century of giving us exceptional work. So I want to dedicate this poem especially to her and to usually the immigrant daughters who have walked before me who got to live to such a fantastic age. Esperanza. Looking back now, I must have misremembered Esperanza to mean wild horsewoman, the word deriving from the Latin sperare, meaning hope. Either way, I could see it. 1,000 grandmothers galloping into dusk, night being the dark horses carrying off the day on their hooves. My grandmother lifts her head in wind bows, shifts her legs and a man's knees buckle, could turn a lover to a drought with a single glance. Now she returns to me as myth, on 4 legs scattering the wet earth behind her. My grandmother calling my name, which was once hers. How she and my father's mother crowned me in this name, having never met. 2 equine women running as I have learned to run. The story goes, her presence would remind men of their mortality, until my grandfather sought to subdue what others could not. I wish I thought to ask her, give me a truth I need to survive. She would tell me, don't worship men. What a waste of devotion. It's been said women have nothing of their own, not even what we're named. Call it a moonless clarity, how she passes through me every time the dark unknuckles and the night loosens its blue-black skin for stars. I want to read this poem for my best friend. As soon as I can find it. My bad, you'll give me a sec.
In the meantime, pre-order their book.
Yeah, you should go on and do that, y'all. It's it's quite the page turner. It gets the girls going. So I've been told. No, but what I will say is, yeah, but I really appreciate what Gabby said about, because I do firmly believe that the chapbook is its own separate entity, not necessarily a vestigial organ of a full length, but that it is a small field unto itself. This is my last poem, Tip Your Bartender. Thank you all for coming out here, despite these fraught times we're in, and it is a great honor to share art with you. Self-portrait as Tiona. 8 strokes in. Somehow you're panting and spent, slumped in the corner of the bed as though you've done something here. You ask, you didn't finish? You smile. I think of how men want daily trophies because they performed. I count each throb until you shrivel into yourself. 8 strokes, 10 next time. You've bested yourself. Somewhat. Then 6, back to 8. You sweat. And it's incredible how much you sweat on such little labor. Sometimes I lay still, I don't engage, and you don't notice. I say, maybe one day you'll fuck me as well as you pontificate about the world. You say, be fair to me. You call me cruel for rewriting history. For saying you don't understand no or boundaries. There's a dark joy in me to laugh at your meager gifts. I am cruel. But I didn't rewrite a thing, babe. You're not a monster, just a man. Truly, you hate my guts because you could never reach them.
Give it up for ISN. What is his grandmother is listening on the live stream?
Oh snap! You know what's crazy? That I've had so many instances where I've been salacious in front of someone's grandmother. Because I know they've been around. But I've gotten over a cussed in front of my fellow immigrant friends' parents.
I remember reading a couple summers ago where my parents-in-law were there, African people of a certain age, and Itiola read a story about her cunt, read a poem about her cunt.
I said we're posting from African parents.
Yeah. Which is a landmark.
I can do anything.
You walked on the moon.
I am invincible.
Give it up for our extremely dazzling and saucy readers. This is a surprise, but one thing, Itiola, when you were saying everyone flocked to the chapbook, as you should, as we all will, as soon as we exit, you said, order it because dear. And the iconic image and the central metaphor of her chapbook is like a deer, a fawn being hunted. Mm-hmm. And that is a kind of intimacy of violence, but also about desire. Mm-hmm. But it's so interesting, I heard it and I was like, you should buy the chapbook. because Itiola is dear. Right? You are dear to us. Everyone here is dear to us, and it's such, it's so interesting. It's so such a blessing to be in this room with all of you who've in the past year, 2 years, shared so many of the slings and arrows of misfortune and are here to share the champagne. So thank you all for coming out. This is so vital. To close us out, I know we've all been kind of on the theme of Etel Adnan, to honor the dead is to come home to ourselves. And I felt it might be appropriate to read one of her last letters in the book.
Yes.
Of cities and women as she returns home to Beirut after quite a while. So I don't know. I feel like everyone in the front row has this book in their purse.
Oh my God.
It's the hot item of the season. And basically, let's see it.
Do you have
Gabby Bates brought it from.
Well, I don't know.
Brought it from the other coast. All right, you find it. So basically, okay, great. Basically, it's a very simple book. It's letters that she writes. Etel Adnan writes these letters to her editor, and she's writing them instead of sending in an essay that she owes him. So she's writing him. The essay is supposed to be on global feminism. It's not supposed to be a series of letters about all the fabulous cities she's in and what she's eating and drinking and who she's hanging out with. But as life is, that's a much more valuable thing to have documented. And in a way, she's participating in the long history of travel writing, from Calvino to Ibn Battuta. She's traveling cities and she's doing a lot of thinking, and she finally makes it home to Beirut. So this is from August 7th, which is my parents' wedding anniversary, 1992. She says, "Dear Fawaz, I'm sitting by a window, don't we always when we write, and I am, as you know, on Beirut's promontory, overlooking the right angle made by the Corniche and the sea nearby." She's always talking about the sea. "With 4 or 5 boats with their lights on and the horizon erased by the haze or the heat. The horizon is high, seen from my 11th floor, and behind me the mountains are already illuminated. There is a semblance of freshness in the air. Because from this height I can feel that the wind is starting to stir, otherwise the apartment would have been a furnace, and my spirit a steam bath." I'm gonna jump a little. "It's the beginning of September, and with that beautiful name of Ailul, and I don't expect much rest. But in the evening of the heat melts into golden lights which engulf us around the setting sun. The fact that we know that there is teeming life under this apotheosis makes these moments bearable. The morning will come with a train of difficulties. Our memories don't have any future anymore." That's what my friend Claire writes to me in a note she leaves with the concierge. It's true. They're already not ahead of us. We are avoiding, collectively, to think too much about what our life here was, and by that I mean our youth. But to be in a perpetual present, like everyone does. It is also scary, but there's no choice. It becomes obvious that one is not going to build on a fleeting moment, and that's not a matter of having aged. The youth having had the same arrested look in their eyes as the old people by now. The city which was so cosmopolitan has no foreigners. These witnesses, so indispensable to the elaboration of memories, are absent. A lot of merchandise comes into the harbor, but nobody follows. It must be true that this place scared the world. Today we're already in mid-September, and the wind at least is stirring. The sea is in movement. Things speak out. Everything is language. I was thinking this morning about a movie I had seen a while ago, and whose scenario was written by Cocteau, The Young Man and Death. Nariv was dancing with Zizi Jeanmaire. Although this ballet is a beautiful and famous one, I couldn't help but think that there was something basically wrong about it. Woman is not deaf. She does not need to portray death. The mystery of death goes through us. We die, but we are not deaf. I don't know what we are. But I can say that Janine's death, and this is the death of a friend she's commenting on, I can say that Janine's death, an enterprise she carried with courage, her family's and her friends' sorrow, the simplicity of everything that pertained to the mourning, this trip that I took for her funerals, all that convinced me in the light of 1 or 2 very sad mornings that life in Beirut has kept its moments of nobility, and that we do have a lot to preserve and to discover. I do not really wish to leave. Far from it. I should tell you that I visited your sister Amal and had lunch with her and met your mother for the first time. It was an agreeable and very quiet moment. I'll find someone who's leaving soon and ask that person to mail you this letter. In another week or two, I will go to Athens, then to Skopelos, to see the house and tend the garden. Say hello to Naval and Jana. Love, Etal. Thank you all for being here. Let's hit the bar.
Oh yeah, that was what I read about you. Oh yeah, sure. I'm adding little bits to my problem. I love that. I tried to scroll for you. I was crying. It was so beautiful. You're just captivating. Yeah, you're saying no. I'm doing it together. Yes. I'm having a lot of No, absolutely not. I'm finishing my program.